CardGamesTV1 Podcast. Best of one, competitive play, time rules, winning strategies. I think that's what this will be. Mainly about like winning strategies, or at least best of one and best of three winning strategies. Because the goal is to win, right? People want to win. See, in casual play, we know the way to win is there's a couple ways to win, but typically the idea is to deal 8 damage to your opponent, and that determines who's the winner. If you play more than one game, then it's the whole best 2 out of 3 thing, right? And that's about it, right? The most basic goal. Then there's the, how you win, right? Other than, dealing 8 damage, you can win through a auto win con effect, milling your opponent out, right? Even just doing some type of burn damage, that can get your opponent down to, 0, which is not too different from just getting your opponent down to 0. So pretty much auto win con, milling your opponent out, or dealing 8 damage, regardless if it's, through attacks or effect damage, because they're relatively the same. Different ways of getting to the same result, right? Technically, there's a 4th way of winning, and that's just your opponent conceding. Your opponent just, accepting defeat, surrendering, whatever you want to call it, like scooping. So that's technical 4th way you can win at any card game, especially if the card game has the whole you lose when you run out of cards rule. There's like maybe 1 or 2 games that don't have that as a rule, because the idea is you take your drop or graveyard area, shuffle, and just keep on playing the game until there's a winner, right? But other than that, most card games like this one do have the deck out rule. So auto win, dealing your opponent 8 damage, or milling them out is the 3 things you're going to try to do, or at least the 3 ways you can win the game. So when it comes to time rules, right, or competitive play uses time. Now, me personally, I don't play with time. I am going to start making a habit of playing with time, because that does matter. I'm going to need to start using a timer when I play, so that way I can get into the habit of being able to do but so much in a short period of time. I mean, it's a challenge, right? The fact that there is a time limit makes it where my moves and decisions and plays and deck building has to be on point, just to take that into account. Normally I don't take time to account, because of the fact is like the whole idea is just to get to a certain point in the game where I can pull off my win con. So the time, right? The game is not over until the game is actually over, and that's the determining factor of time for me. But the fact that we actually have an outside element, aka time, right? You're allowed a certain amount of time, whether it be 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or an hour, right? 60 minutes to play. I was in a duel for about 2 hours. I ended up being the winner because I milled my opponent out. But the thing is that the match shouldn't have taken 2 hours to complete. Personally, I don't like things taking too long anyway. 30 minutes, at most, even 45 minutes. An hour is reasonable, but I'm just saying, at least, because it's about 15 minutes per game, right? Best of 3. If you're doing best of 3, it shouldn't take more than 45 minutes to play three games at most, if 3 games end up having to be a thing. But like I said, time is time. So with that being said, keeping that in mind, time, then you need to try to play strategies that don't take too much time to play out. Or if you're going to play a strategy that does take a long time to play out, like let's say you're doing turning tides and you're not ramping, so that means you're hard casting turning tides on turn 7, which is going to take a lot of time. Because let's say hypothetically it takes you 5 minutes per turn, right? And you need 7 turns in order to play your turning tides. So 5 times 7 is 35. If I'm right, 6 times 5 is 30. Yeah, 35. 35 minutes. And if you're playing best of 1, well, you're only allotted typically 30 minutes for a best of 1 match. So that extra 5 minutes, aka that extra turn, you're not going to get, right? And that's if each of your turns is taking that long. So that means you have to divide that with your opponent, right? So that means you have to take no more than 2 minutes and 2.5 minutes for your turn, 2.5 minutes for your opponent's turn, and vice versa, just so you guys can try to get 35 minutes. Well, obviously 30 is the most you can get, unless sometimes you do get the extra 5 minutes for like overtime. So they tend to sometimes give you 5 minutes overtime. So mathematically, it does add up to 35 minutes for best of 1. But it's the fact that you and your opponent have to literally use at most 2.5 minutes at most each. Which means if slow playing is a factor, well, that's drastically reducing the 2.5. Okay, the 2.5 minutes, right? Because if it takes you 3 minutes for your turn or 4 minutes for your turn to conclude, that's a lot of time being wasted. So, like I said, because time is a factor, time is against you, right? Time is against you. So having a strategy like that, so you might not want to go that route. Even though turning tides can get you a lot of W's, you don't have that much time for it. More reason why you should be ramping if you're going to play turning tides, right? That we can do maybe potentially at earliest a turn 4 turning tides. Turn 5 is plausible. Turn 6, can be a little typical if you can ramp at least once, but ramping twice means turn 5, ramping 3 times, at least turn 4. So it just depends what you're playing that can help you ramp up that fast. So I think Super Saiyan 3 Goku with Magenta Fire, West Supreme Kai can get you a turn 4 turning tides if I'm right. But anyway, yeah. Well, if you get too much in the fires, you probably can. So I'm trying to remember, does it take 3 or 4 turns for you to get 6 energy with Super Saiyan 3 Goku Reboot? It's been a while. Gotta look at the leader again. See how long it takes to get all 6 energy plus Majin Fire. So that way she counts as the 7th energy for turning tides. But anyway, when you have a strategy like that, you have to consider, time. You gotta consider if your opponent takes too long on their turn, right? They spend 5 minutes per turn. So that means in 4 turns, if they take 5 minutes per turn, 4 turns, that's 20 minutes that they're burning from a 30-minute round, which means you only got 10 minutes to win, or to at least put yourself in a position to win. So with that kind of stuff being an issue, the fact that we don't have every turn, measured out time-wise, where no one can take longer for their turn than they should. Because of that, you're gonna have to take into account this, probably gonna have to play a strategy that's a little bit slower, or still have the strategy, right? The win con of, turning the tides and whatnot, but having alternative strategies to get you a W anyway, in case you can't achieve a win con, right? Which we always call it, backup plans. Like you have a backup plan or at least a backup win con. Now sometimes that comes in the form of cards, like you can have other cards in your deck as a win con. Sometimes I try to have more than one card in a deck that can be used as a win con, right? Sometimes I try to have the leader be my finisher, for example, right? I'll try to have a battle card or two as a finisher, a unison as a finisher, as an example, maybe even an extra card as a finisher, like Catastrophic Blow or something like that, right? Try to have something that could potentially help me, finish out the game. But if I can't play those cards, and most of those cards aren't that cheap, most cards that are capable of being finishers, capable of being used to, finish the game in your favor, tend to be 5 costs and higher on average. Sometimes there's some 4-drop cards you can use as a win con, but I notice mathematically there's most cards that can be used as a win con tend to be 5 costs and higher. Even some unisons where in order to use them you need to -4 in order to get their ability to get really strong and have double strike and dual attack and all these extra benefits, right? So obviously they're meant to be a finisher, but if you add the fact that in order for them to stay on the field they need to at least have 1 marker, then when you have to take into account the 4 markers you got to remove, plus you need a marker for the card to stay on the field so you can attack, then that means you need 5 markers, which usually means you need 5 energy. Could you play it for 4 energy and then attach a second copy to give it a marker so it has 5 markers? Then yeah, that's one way to reduce the cost and be able to play a turn 5 play, right? Unison finisher on turn 4. So there's a way to play it a turn sooner than later. Or you play some ramp strategy and play your finisher on turn 3 or whatever, right? So anything is possible. It's just a matter of taking that stuff to account and then making sure that you have that stuff to do, right? Because the purpose of your deck is to do the things you want to do, right? It's not about you look at a deck and say, oh, this deck looks fun and cool and interesting, and then try to make it, try to play it competitively per se, or try to play it to the end result of winning. What you're really supposed to be doing is thinking about how you want to win, how fast you want to win. That's where the whole burn or aggro or mill or even an auto win, right? Thinking about which one of these ways you want to win, or you want to use multiples, like you might want to use an auto win con with a mill strategy. So your deck, your leader, let's say, is the one that has the auto win feature, like the Beerus leader, pay 16 win, and then in your deck you have a bunch of mill cards. That way you're trying to mill your opponent for game, but if you don't succeed, as long as you can get 16 energy, hopefully you're playing ramp cards, right? 16 energy, then you can just use your auto win con. So you have at least 2 ways you could potentially win. Technically a third, which is just dealing your opponent 8 damage. But if you know, like I know, you should know that dealing the last 2 damage is the hardest in this game, because combo is a thing. If combo wasn't a thing, then dealing the last 2 damage would be less hard, because then it just boils down to blockers and negates, maybe an effect of a card like a unison or something that would try to prevent your attack from going through, and that's about it. But it's not too difficult to prevent blockers, to potentially prevent a effect from affecting your battle cards, right? Because you could just play something as barrier, and that will already make you immune to any effect that would try to hurt you. That doesn't say ignoring barrier, obviously. Plus, you could just use a unison, for example, that's already automatically immune to any effect that would try to KO, warp, reduce power, bounce, or whatever a battle card. Since unisons aren't battle cards, they're immune to a lot of things. They're immune to a lot of counterplays. They're immune to a lot of kill cards, battle tricks, as they could say, that kind of stuff, right? So more reason to use unisons as finishers and leaders then battle cards as finishers. Use battle cards for other purposes, defense, maybe, to apply a little pressure, for aggro purposes, but mainly just use them for defense, use them for combo power, right? But use your leader and your unisons as your main attackers, right? Your game-winning attacks, because they're immune to so many things. So it's the whole uninteractable win con or uninteractable card concept. And the same goes for like an extra card, like Catastrophic Blow, for example. And there are some other cards that are similar. There is a extra card. It's a Xeno extra card where it's a win con, but you gotta meet the conditions. But you get the idea. There are some win cons that, or cards you can use to win the game that aren't battle card related. So obviously these are things to look into and to keep in mind, especially when new sets drop. I'm always looking to see if there's a new potential win con, preferably that's not a battle card, so that way it has a better chance of being a win con, because it's, the whole uninteractable. So definitely always interested in leaders that are finishers, unisons that are finishers, extra cards that they can, they can finish the game, So we shall see. I mean, it'd be interesting to make a super combo that when you combo, it deals your point of damage. That'd be kind of cool. Obviously, it'd be busted, but just an idea, random idea. Make it where you and your opponent both take damage, so that way there's a cost. Because if you and your opponent both have 1 life, then using the super combo would be a bad idea. Because both of y'all, because then the game will end at a time. I mean, it'd probably be a bad idea game mechanic wise, just because it could produce a lot of ties, and that right there could make a toxic gameplay, right? And it's like, oh no, this shouldn't even be in here, because it just keeps creating this scenario where people are tying on purpose just so they can try to get W's through tying or some ridiculousness. Because the attack doesn't have to go through for it to be effective. So yeah, so it's a bad idea. I'll just put it that way. It's a bad idea. Still like the idea of a super combo that makes your opponent mill at least 1 card. That'd be nice. 2 cards would be better, but at least one card. Because we have like a card that makes your opponent discard a card from or warp a card from the hand. There's another card that makes your opponent discard a card from the hand that you combo. What we don't have yet is a super combo that makes your opponent mill, so that's why I'm mentioning it, because it'd be kind of cool to have that. And also, I'm into the whole mill thing, so it would be nice to have a super combo that mills. But anyway, well, I was at about, you want to pick how you want to win and then try to make it happen faster, because time is against you, right? Time is a factor. And then there's the human element, since everybody, don't have internal clocks, as they say, or not willing to put in effort to put time. Because the funny thing is, since we all have phones, it wouldn't be that hard to like make an app that literally has a timer thing where you put 40, like let's say the round is the round is 30 minutes, right? Boom, 30 minutes, and then it counts the turns, so it'll literally have a turn counter, and it's already math. It already takes the time that you put. So let's say you put 30 minutes, and it automatically calculates how much time it will take for 30 minutes to be. How many turns is in 30 minutes is what I'm trying to say. So if it says like, there's 16 turns in 30 minutes, then that means essentially 8 turns per person. So that means each player has 8 turns, right? Or at least we just set it up where we have it allotted for a certain amount of time, where we're like, okay, maximum 8 turns, for example, maximum 8 turns. Obviously, that some people who be like, oh man, but my strategy is a turn 10 strategy. It's like, okay, but this is a turn 8 format right now, right? It's like you only have up to turn 8, so you better find a way to ramp that 10 drop so you can play it on turn 8, because you're not going to get to turn 10 to play it. So you better try to win sooner than later, right? So you might have to change up your strategy. But that's the whole point of this conversation, is point out the fact that because in competitive play time is a factor, you're going to have to speed things up. So you're going to have to try to play less cards to search, right? Because that just wastes more time. Try to play cards that have more that will have multiple effects, but also have a lot of the same effects. Basically, like, have a whole bunch of cards that can give double strike, plus do other things, right? You know, have multi-purpose cards, right? Like in my aggro deck, I have Champa and E Supreme Kai. So that means I have 8 cards in my deck that can give me 10k combo power plus double strike. Right, so that way whenever I need that ability, it'll be there, instead of me trying to draw or search out that card, that effect. Especially if I see some people only play one Champa in their deck. Like, all right, so he's doing, but I'd rather see that card more often than not, because early game, especially turn 1, turn 2, I want to deal a lot of damage, at least the first 4 damage, because it's the easiest. I want to do that much damage in the first 2 turns, because after turn 2, it's going to be harder to do damage. So, especially if my opponent draws a whole bunch of cards, and if they draw more than me, and they have a strategy where they're always out hand sizing me, then that drastically reduces the chances of me winning through attacks. That means I have to change my strategy. Since they're drawing a lot, then I have to switch to milling them out. Alright? And especially with the way the game is right now, the player base, I should say, are leaning towards more, draw heavy deck strategies, and they even play like low card counts, like less than 55 cards per deck. Most players don't play 60 card decks, so the likelihood of them decking out is a lot higher, right? So just take into account that they might draw 10 to 20 cards, on top of the fact that they already took out 8 for their life, 6 for the hand, so 8, 9, 10, 14 cards. So they already took out 14 cards at the beginning of the game from their deck. Then on top of that, they might draw 10 to 20 cards, right? Let's say 20, so 20 on top of the 14, so that's 34 cards. 34 cards out of the 50 card deck. Well, I mean, let's say they're 54 card deck, which means they have 20 cards left in their deck. So you gotta mill them for 20 cards, to mill them out, right? And that's if you have a mill strategy. If you don't have a mill strategy, then it's just a matter of stalling until they do mill, deck out, right? But if you have a mill strategy, then 20 card mill is all you would need, which means you need to mill them 2 cards 10 times at least. Which, if you can mill them 2 cards on your turn, 2 on your opponent on their turn, then that's a total of 10 turns. 5 of your turns, 5 of their turns, type of thing. On top of what they're already doing to themselves, which is drawing 20 plus cards anyway, as an example. So I'm working on a Janemba deck, so obviously I'm doing those calculations for that deck. I definitely would like more cards that says my opponent draws cards, like draw 2 cards, draw 3 cards type stuff. It'd be kind of cool. Shit, it'd be cool if a super combo lets my opponent draw 2 cards. I know that sounds counterintuitive. Some people would be like, oh, that's a stupid idea. A super combo that lets your opponent draw 2 cards. Like, not for me. Drawing 2 cards, to me, it's similar to them milling 2 cards, right? Granted, milling 2 cards would be a better effect, right? And most people will agree that milling 2 cards is better than letting your opponent draw 2 cards. But hey, to each their own. To me, it's the same thing regardless. But whatever. So we need to speed up our strategy. We need to make sure that whether we're playing best of 1 or best of 3, game 1 in best of 1 or best of 3 is the most important game. Game 2, game 3, a little irrelevant, right? But game 1 is very important. You need to win your game 1s at least. Especially in best of 1, all you have is game 1, so you definitely need to win that if you want to win at all, right? If you don't want to win, hey, you do you. But if you want to win, you gotta win game 1 in best of 1 and in best of 3. And there's a couple ways of doing it, and of course, what I'm saying is keep that in mind, because I had a couple of scenarios where my opponent was very low in cards. They had my first round opponent had 3 cards left in their deck, and I'm like, just three more turns, 3 more turns. If I can stall out for 3 more turns, they would deck out. Or if they attack one more time, Oceanus effect would trigger and they would deck out. And that's before an attack could even, be successful. So I will win just by an attack being declared. So I'm like, so close. 3 cards left in the deck, so close. Had another scenario where I think my opponent ended up with 2 cards left in the deck, because they had 6 cards, so they still had 1 attack left that they could do, and they made the most of that attack. No, I think what it was is he decided not to attack. He's like, okay, I'm gonna just end my turn. It's like, all right, cool. He didn't want to risk it for the biscuit, as they say, right? So, but that's the thing. He had 6 cards left in his deck. Another opponent had 3 cards left in his deck. It's like, if I only had, Janimba, Unison in my deck, right? If I had a mill strategy or anything, if I had some way of making my opponent lose the last 2, lose the last cards of their deck, I would win just with that alone. But the other factor to take into account, and since I don't keep track of time, which I need to make a habit of doing now, obviously, keeping my opponent's life lower than mine, and I already typically, especially on average, get my opponent down to 2 life by turn 3 or 4. So all I have to do is just keep my defenses up, and I could just win in time. Now I prefer to win by dealing my opponent 8 damage. I have no problem with winning through my opponent decking out and whatnot. Right? These are legit, valid win conditions. But winning just because I just so happen to have more than my life than my opponent's, it's just funny of an idea, considering the fact that I've always had high life. Ever since I started playing the game, I always was very defensive of my life, always trying to make sure it doesn't take hits left and right. I'm always trying to defend it, so I always tend to have high life. Part of why I stopped playing the super combos, a year after, starting to play the game, right? Because after a year, I was like, I don't really get to use the super combos. I typically have 5 or more life by the time I need the super combo. It's like, right now it'd be nice to use the super combo for me to go for game, but I have 5 life. I can't play it. And that's the thing. Now, of course, some people will be like, well, then for all that, you should just, let yourself go down to 4, and then they'll be useful. Yeah, but that's not how I play. Could I do that? Yes, of course. I could allow myself to get down to 4 life, so that way they could be useful. But I just think that's just a bad idea. Just seems weird of, just to make a card like that. Especially, it's the other thing is that super combos are pretty random. There's no guarantee that, just because I'm using super combos doesn't guarantee me that I'm going to win. Because like I said, I've played super combos a lot. Different types. Obviously, the multicolored ones are my favorites. But, and they never really guarantee me victory. I mean, they were helpful. They got me close or something. Or I did win, but it wasn't guaranteed, and that's the thing for me. It's like I want to win when I want to win, right? Have a strategy that once I pull off the strategy, I'm guaranteed to win. I don't want to be in a scenario where it's like I could win. It's like, nah, I want to win, right? I don't want to be in a scenario where I could win, right? Just like I don't want to be in a scenario that I could lose, right? A scenario where it's like, you know, right now I should be in a winning position. I go for game and then end up not, you know, getting game just because of randomness. And for me, super combos are part of randomness. And unless you know how much combo power your opponent has in your hand, that's what you try to do the combo math to at least estimate how much combo power they have, or use the open hand strategy and literally look in their hand and be like, okay, I know exactly how much combo power you have, and I'm gonna rip that super combo out that has a draw effect just to make sure there's no extra random stuff coming out, right? I don't want there to be suddenly you play a super combo, draw into another super combo, play that, draw into another super combo. I've seen that before. Somebody play a super combo and draw into a super combo and just kept doing that. It's like, damn, the odds of you getting your super combos like that back to back, you know, and that's the thing. That's the whole point. It adds a level of randomness, and I don't want randomness when it comes to determining if I win or lose. So I try to mitigate anything that is random, anything that could potentially be random, but you know, so that way whatever I use is deliberate. It's on purpose. It does what I need it to do when I need it to do it. I don't want anything to be random. So after a while I just stopped using super combos. Part of it was not the draw is a little irrelevant. Super combos could literally have no effect other than 0 cost 10k. The thing was, they didn't guarantee you the 0 cost 10k. I'm okay not being able to draw with a super combo. That's why I played the multicolor super combos that don't have draw effects, because I don't really need the draw like that. It's useful, but I don't need it like that. What I really needed, which was hard to get a lot of the times, was the 10k combo power, because the super combos had no combo power until you had 4 or less life, which I typically didn't have. But that's the reasoning for why I stopped using super combos for a long time, until the multicolor ones came out. Then I started using them. But ultimately, all in all, 0 cost 10k combo power is nice, but it's not necessary. Especially, I'd rather not be in a position where I have to combo, because to me that's just a waste of valuable cards. But I've said that many times before in other videos and stuff, so no need to keep repeating, you know, that should be a given by now. But you know, I'm always looking for different ways to win, because we already have certain established win cons, right? Certain battle cards you can use as a win condition, certain unisons, even certain leaders you can use as a win condition, or at least to build a deck that makes it easier to win, right? You know, for me, most of my go-to leaders is BO1, Hachiak, Setu Zamasu. When it comes to needing a defensive leader, and you know, specific colors. So if I need a red leader that's defensive, then BO1 tends to be the pick, right? If I need a black leader that's defensive, Hachiak, right? If I need a blue leader that's defensive or anti-aggro, right? Then that's Setu Zamasu. But if I need to ramp, obviously ramping is mainly a blue thing. I'm still waiting for them to make green capable ramping, maybe ramp in a different way, but anyway, then obviously there's some blue leaders that are good for ramping. Or if I just need the ability to untap energy after I tap them, so I can play multiple cards in a turn, then obviously Soul Striker would be one of those options. And then the new Crimson Warrior would be another option when it comes to untapping energy. or any leader that when they awaken, they untap 2 energies will be like my go-to. And if I need, the ability to untap that is not with a blue leader, then obviously any other leader that can untap energy that's of a different color, red, green, black, whatever, would be stuff I look into. And the list goes on. Depending on what I need and what I'm trying to do determines what deck I'm going to play and what deck I'm going to choose, what leader I'm going to play. This is why it's surprising that most people don't have like a list of leaders that they consider or that they're interested in using possibly for a strategy or what's it called, for competitive play, for example. Something that will make sense. Like, for example, set 1 Champa leader has always been a good leader. And then they even made a 2-drop bottles for the leaders, so that way you can awaken. Because the most useful part of that leader, it's its awaken side, because its awaken side has an active main, which is not once per turn, so it makes it powerful, that you can discard a card, active main, right, and give the leader or any of your battle cards double strike. And that's any battle card. That even includes black battle cards. So you can overwhelm for something. That, like for example, a good strong overwhelm card to use with this effect would be Fu Banisher, something like that. And he has the he has triple attack. He could attack 3 times. So give him double strike 1 time by discarding 1 card. You could discard a unison for that, whatever. Discard a card, bang, now he has double strike. So he can attack 3 times and double strike. That means he could potentially do 6 damage all by himself. And you could do it as soon as turn 4, because you only need 4 energies and like 8 cards in your drop in order to play this out, which wouldn't be that difficult, right? So that's just something, to keep in mind of things you can do. Obviously, you can play a whole bunch of cards in the deck that have dual attack, that are, battle cards, obviously, and give them double strike so they can, swing more than once and do damage. And that would definitely be useful against, a deck like Hatchiyak, for example. Being able to give your battle cards that can attack more than once double strike, so that way they can deal more damage, or at least have the chance of dealing damage at least once would matter. Because the idea is to do 8 damage, right? You only need to do 2 damage, right, 4 times in order to win, right? Because that's 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 3 is 9, right? So if you have triple strike, then you just need 3 attacks to go through of triple strike to win. Quadruple strike, obviously, you only need 2 attacks. And if they create something where the thing deals 8 damage, then you just need 1 attack. Granted, we have something similar to it, which is victory strike. So, this is the kind of stuff that, we're looking for and thinking about that would be useful for helping, get us the W's, which is our main goal, is W's. So that's all I'm always focusing on, the game itself, understanding how the game works, understanding why the first 4 damage is relatively easy. And it's like, no matter whether I'm playing or somebody else is playing, it's like, on average, most people deal 4 damage at most on average. I've been seeing a lot of gameplays, and it's like, it took him 5 turns, but he did 4 damage. He definitely did. Took him 5 turns, but he did it. You know what I mean? It just depends on how him and his opponent. It depends on how the player and the opponent, was playing, and the decisions they made to determine, how long it took to do the 4 damage. But they tend to do it anyway. So the point is, most games do end. Most games on average will have players at some point lost for life, and then it's just a matter of dealing that last 4 damage, right? And the winner is the one who can actually finish off dealing the last 4 damage. So that kind of stuff. Shit, I've been in scenarios where my opponent was at 1 life, I had 8 life, but they won. You know what I mean? Like, that's possible. You know what I mean? Right? That's a possibility. So the thing is trying to figure out how, Sway? How did that happen? How did I have 8 life yet I still lost? My opponent only had 1. Further proving how hard it is to deal the last damage. But if you have a strategy, then that can make that detail, that fact. It's a fact, not an opinion. It's a fact. If you have a strategy, a way of dealing the last 2 damage, then you're good. And that's how you're going to get a lot of your W's when it comes to that scenario. But there is one. Now there is other. Well, I mean, auto win cons another. So there's 3 ways you can win that doesn't involve damage. Mill. Wait, am I saying it right? No, 2 ways, right? Mill, auto win con. All right, 2 ways you can win that doesn't involve attacking. No, I said it right. It is 3. Burn, right? It's still, you know, because it bypasses the whole attack thing. This game is about attacking and defending, and defending is a lot cheaper than attacking, and I've said that for a long time. I mean, I don't say it a lot publicly, but I mean, among my friends, I always point that out. Like, man, it cost me 4 energy for me to play this very powerful double strike 20k, you know, card that I'm going to try to use as a win con, right? But it only costs you 1 energy to stop me. Something as simple as a weak's cohesion, just 1 energy can stop me. Or for free, you know, stuff like blocker negates, sparking negates, or you just combo the super combo, or just combo a whole bunch of 5Ks, and you were able to stop my attack. Like I said, 1 to 0, it costs you to stop me from winning with a win con. But for me to use the win con, or try to use something to win with, which I have to play, that means I have to pay for it, right? It tends to cost me more than it costs you. So it costs me more to try to win than it does for you to stop me. So make that make sense, right? And then you get the free counter plays. You know, if my win con, which on average probably will cost me 5 energy to play, if it don't have deflect, then it's going to get God sealed for free, not even for 5 energy, for free. So as you can see, the pattern, I'm just pointing out an observation. Obviously, it's like, if you look at it, it's cheaper, easier, more common to, you know, to stop attacks than it is to attack. Granted, you can say the leader is free, unison, you know, especially we got 1-drop and 2-drop unisons, and they can be relatively good, and they have the ability to at least ultimate, as they say, and potentially become finishers. And like, yeah, granted, those do exist, so those are a possibility. And technically, there's some free play battle cards you could play for free, you know, like Overwhelm, obviously, that can help you in these scenarios of being able to freely play something out to attack, so you're not paying energy to try to go for game. So it's fair that we have some. It's just there's way more defensive cards that are free or cheap than there are win cons or finishers, or whatever you want to call them, right? That, you know, are cheap or free, right? They cost 1 or less. There's very few, right? Even ultimates, most of them at the cheapest. I mean, yeah. Well, no, there's some, but there's more ultimates that cost 4 or more to play, and you only have 1 copy of it, than some ultimates where they cost like just 1 energy or free, like a baby Hatchiak, or a what's her name, Pan Time Patrol, right? She can get cheaper, she can be free under certain conditions, right? But they're one-offs, so the likelihood of getting it to play it sells them free, right? But you gotta have 12 cost worth of battle cards in play, so technically not free per se, but it's, you know, whatever. But still, all in all, it's cheaper to defend than it is to attack, is what I'm trying to say. So with that in mind, then we need to obviously focus on ways to mitigate our opponent's ability to play these types of cards. I remember promoting for a while, didn't really get the credit I deserve, but whatever. Promoted for a while the idea of using the 3-drop Super Saiyan 3 Goku. I think it was Super Saiyan 4 was a Super Saiyan Goku 3-drop yellow battle card that has the ability to force your opponent to, in order for them to play an extra card on your turn, they have to tap a energy. So if they're tapped out, they can't play their free negates, and this was before blocking negates was even a thing. They can't play their free negates. And the sparking negates, what I mean to say, they can't play their sparking negates. So this was a counter to that. This was a way to stop sparking negates. But they still have access to, like Baby Hatchet. If they have Baby Hatchet, they have Baby Hatchet. Good for them, right? But this was a way to make it harder, not to play the free, sparking negate. But if they had an energy, let's say they had one energy to play a negate, this will make it hard for them to play that one negate because of the effect, right? Because they have to pay for the card, and then they have to tap another untapped energy to play it. So basically, it just made extra cards cost 2 cards to play, or 1 card to play. Basically, it taxed. It added a cost to playing a negate, which made it awesome. So it's like, oh man, this is not too different from Swift Retaliation Cooler per se. It's just I play this, then I swing or overwhelm and start swinging for game, right? And not have to worry about my opponent, for 1 energy stopping my attack, or for free stopping my attack if they're tapped out. So this was just a way to at least get to the combo step. Now, granted, they could always still stop my attack by comboing, so that's always still an option. So, not a guaranteed situation for you to win, but it is still a more favorable position. But the point was I was putting that out there as an idea, strategy, especially if you get it out early. Because I was playing in my Sin Shinron deck. I played in many other yellow decks, but definitely my Sin Shinron deck. I think I'm gonna have to bring it back, put it back in the deck. I still have my playset. I just don't have it in the deck at the moment. But I could put it back, and I could put Swift Retaliation and just have like 8 cards in my deck that can increase the possibility of preventing a Flying Nimbus or something like that, or Violent Rays or something similar to that, stopping me from being able to, go for game by paying 6. So that was part of the strategy, was to make it where once I pay 6 and I start swinging, I don't, get Violent Rays or something similar to that. So that was the idea. That was the theory behind it. It did catch on. People used it, blah, blah, blah. But, like I said, I didn't get the credit for the spice, as they say, or whatever. At least people were using it. So that alone made me happy. It's like, yes, people seeing the value in the card. That's awesome. People are using it. That's what I like to see. It makes the game more interesting when people are trying to do better in the game, which is part of why I share my ideas. Because one, I have these ideas for a reason, so I can get, more W's in the game, right? I'm trying to solve problems. If I'm having a problem with my opponent playing negates for free, like sparking negates, for example, and now blocker negates, then yeah, I will want to use something like that to help me fight against that situation, to reduce the possibility of that, stopping me from going for game. Especially if I have a win con that requires me to attack. But burn and mill or auto win are the other ways I try to circumvent the whole attack defend thing, or just defense in general. Just it's like I need to bypass my opponent's hand, as it were, because the bigger my opponent's hand gets, the harder it gets. The higher the defense is, which means the harder it is for me to deal the last 2 damage, right? Which is why I always say the last 2 damage is the hardest. Because by the time you get your opponent down to 2 life, whether it's fast like how I do it or slow like how most other people do it, your opponent's going to have a huge hand size unless you rip their hand away right? And we do have ways of doing it, turning the tides being one of them. Dealing the last 2 damage is very hard when your opponent has a huge hand size. So, and hand control, it's not that strong in those scenarios, unless it's, you know, a sell strategy where you reduce your opponent's hand size down to 3, or a turning the tides or something similar to that, right? So that's the whole no hand strategy. Just like, yep, these hand sizes are getting out of pocket and it gets harder to deal the last 2 damage. And if it's hard to deal the last 2 damage, what's the point, right? What's the point in playing if I can't guarantee that I can deal the last 2 damage just because of the game mechanics, just because the game state, as long as my opponent has a whole bunch of cards in their hand, the likelihood of my attacks going through is slim to none. And that shouldn't be the case, right? Like, not saying that, you know, we should restrict our opponent from having a maximum hand size. Yo, imagine they had that. Imagine if, like, because if I'm right, yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh still has that maximum hand size thing where at the end of your turn you gotta drop down until you have, you know, a maximum of 6 cards or something like that. Imagine if they incorporate that into this game. Woo, that'd be interesting. I mean, Sin Shenron players will like it because they'll deliberately draw a lot, just so that way at the end of their turn they drop a whole bunch of Shadow Dragons to the drop, right? Or yeah, a whole bunch of, you know, dragons. Yeah, it is Shadow Dragons. A whole bunch of Shadow Dragons into the drop before their turn 6, right? So that'd be funny. Something to think about, but yeah, you know, the game would definitely be different. I mean, something I would like to test out like how the game would be. Would it be any different? Would it make the game easier per se, right? Would the last 2 damage be easier to do attack wise, so you wouldn't have to resort to milling your opponent out, burning them for the last 2 damage, right? Or what is it? Or win through time rule, or, you know, by having more life than your opponent. Or let's see, like casual, you can have a maximum hand size, but I mean you can have a unlimited hand size. But imagine if they incorporated that, they made it where you have a maximum hand size competitively. Would that make competitive play faster? Make it where your opponent can draw like 30 cards in a turn, hypothetically, right? But they don't get to keep that, right? So they could draw a lot, so that way they can try to get to certain, you know, cards that they need, certain, you know, combo pieces for their strategy. That is fine, but to keep all that combo power, right? All those negates, right? Those cheap and free negates, right? That'd be too much. So to balance it out, to make sure that, you know, that one deck is not by default stronger than another deck by the hand size. Maybe I should do that, make a post about that. Should, you know, Bandai at least competitively introduce or add maximum hand size, right? That'd be interesting, just as an idea. Me, I like a challenge, so I'd rather figure out, right, ways to win the game. But logically, you know, you want to be able to, especially in a game where comboing and, you know, is a thing, a maximum hand size will make things a little bit more fair. Ironically, there is a card that I'm playing with in my Janemba deck, because I'm doing Janemba hand control. I have Ready to Strike, something like that, Ready to Strike, or First Strike, Piccolo, something like that, and he already causes my opponent hand size to reduce down to 6. I also have a 8-drop Gogeta in my Zamasu deck that reduces my opponent's hand size down to 3 at the end of their turn. So these are effects that at the end of my opponent's turn, you know, causes them to have a maximum hand size by reducing their hand size. So, right, that's a factor. That's something interesting. And there are some effects you could use to reduce your opponent's hand size from 30 to at least 11 cards, right? Those are some weird effects, but ironically nowadays they would be a little viable. But just the idea of incorporating that, would that make the game at least balanced enough that, you know, outcomes of matches are not largely determined by who has the bigger hand size? Would this make it more balanced, more skill based, more intensive, where it's not like, oh, I just play a deck where I draw 30 cards and that's how I win. I win just by having more cards than my opponent, right? I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh tends to draw a lot. Most other card games tend to draw a lot, but some card games do have a maximum hand size. Magic has one, Yu-Gi-Oh has one. So it's not. So there's a precedence for it, right? It's not out of the norm. I'm not just like, oh my god, I just hate decks that just have 30 card hand sizes. Let's just make a limit, something that's never been done in other card games. Like, no, I'm just saying, like, hey, other card games have a maximum card hand size limit. So, you know, let's see, you know, at least hypothetically, would this be something interesting, you know, for the game? Would this make it fair, balanced, whatever people want to call it, you know, in a just-in-case scenario, right? Oh well, we'll see. And that's the end of the podcast.